Hello, this is Karen Ranzi. I'm very excited today to be talking with Dr. Benjamin Benulis. And we are going to be talking about EMF radiation and the dangers and what you can do about it. This is something I've been interested in for a long time and been looking for somebody qualified to speak about it. So I'm going to be telling you right now first about Dr. Benulis. Dr. Benjamin Benulis is a plant-based doctor of chiropractic based in Phoenix, Arizona, who helps people reverse autoimmune disease with diet and lifestyle. He also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania and spent his previous career in the semiconductor industry, where he worked for companies that developed many of the precursors to 5G technology. He has spent over 300 hours investigating the emerging EMF and 5G issues, how they affect human health, the environment, privacy, freedom, and security. As the Chief Health Officer for Arizonans for Safe Technology, he has spent much of 2020 fighting the rollout of 5G in his home city and state. Very, very important information. Welcome, Dr. Ben.
Karen, thanks so much for having me. Real excited to connect. Real excited to be here.
Great. We're excited for your information. So I'm going to jump right into some questions for you. What are EMFs? And more specifically, what is 5G?
So EMFs are electromagnetic frequencies. This is radiation that is given off by a number of things. In the 21st century, now that's mostly cell phones, cell phone towers, Bluetooth devices, and any kind of smart device like a Wi-Fi router that sends off any sort of mixed signal, analog or analog digital signal, gives off electromagnetic frequencies to varying levels. 5G is basically the next generation of wireless technology. So we've had Gs 1 through 4, and just to give you context, so 1G was the original cell phone networks back in the 1990s, maybe even late 80s when they had the big brick phones. And that was sort of the earliest generation. And the second generation, some data could be transmitted wirelessly. And then 3G came along. That was the advent of text messaging. And then in 2007, something called the iPhone came out. And the iPhone, you could watch video on your phone. You have apps and these games that used a lot of data. And the wireless industry actually had to react and create new infrastructure to be able to support how data hungry everybody was, downloading games and videos and apps on their phone. And so they created this 4G network in 2009. And now 5G is going to basically build on top of that and add even more connectivity. So instead of taking 10, 20 minutes to download a movie on your phone, now you can download it in 5-10 seconds. You can stream movies from your car, watch Netflix in your car. So that's what 5G is. And 5G uses a different frequency band than the other previous generations. So 4G used anywhere from about 700 megahertz to about 6 gigahertz. And 5G is going to use even higher frequencies, what's called millimeter wave microwave radiation, anywhere from 30 to about 300 gigahertz. And so it's a new technology that's emerging, that's basically being built out right now on top of the existing 4G infrastructure.
Wow. Uh, Being what you said now about 5G, are there any benefits that they're saying that come along with the 5G network?
Sure. So the main thing is better internet connectivity and better download speeds. So you'll be able to transmit data instantaneously, and like I said, you'll be able to download um, uh, movies much faster. Okay. Now you can already download movies fast in your home internet connection, but wirelessly you'll be able to download movies in large amounts of data. It'll enable things like augmented reality. And so if you ever heard of the game Pokemon Go, where you basically like look at the world through your phone and it shows Pokemons. Well, imagine that on a much larger scale, and you're superimposing more than just Pokemons on a map. You have all kinds of things that you can use for games and all kinds of virtual reality purposes. So that's one of the things it's going to enable. It's also going to enable something called the Internet of Things, which we'll probably get to at some point, but where all these devices are interacting, and pretty much every device has its own chip and can communicate with the 5G grid to do things without needing human interaction, basically.
When is this 5G rolling out?
It started rolling out this year, and it's going to be just a sort of gradual add-on to the existing 4G infrastructure. So it's happening now, and in certain states, it's really happening. It's where I live, the build out is probably 40-50% complete. And so it just sort of depends on the geography and where these wireless companies are building all of these what's called small cell towers.
Yes,
Which,
I'm already seeing this in my area where lots of these smaller towers are like, I see it right down the road, like they're on the highways. I'm seeing like these three towers not that far from where I live, on Route 17 in Ramsey, New Jersey. I'm seeing them just sprout up. And like
mm-hmm,
some of them are very close together and right near the road.
mm-hmm.
Um, looks scary. Like I always wonder what people are thinking as they're driving down the highway, seeing these towers that before were in the distance. Now they're like right in front of your face.
Yeah, good point. So the 4G infrastructure, it was what's called the macro towers, the ones that are 250 feet in the air. Um, with the 5G towers, what they're saying is that basically the millimeter microwave radiation that it uses to communicate can't travel as far. So what they want to do is they want to put the towers closer to the ground and closer together. So now instead of all these sparse macro towers that kind of spread out and they're away from neighborhoods and you don't need to put them near anything and no one really wants to live near them anyway. Well, now you've got all these 5G small cell towers that are 50 feet off the ground, and they want to build them sometimes every 300 feet and as close to 50 feet from a home. So now you don't have this macro tower that's off in the distance. You have a small tower that's giving off even more radiation that's basically beaming right into a second story window, okay, and like right up next to the house. So the amount of radiation exposure that we're going to get from 5G versus 4G is orders of magnitude more.
I don't think that we know what we're getting into here. Just recently, there were people coming around from the electric company putting on smart meters on the homes in my neighborhood, and I declined it. And they were saying, well, you're going to have to pay every month then. Like it was just a bad thing. I'm going to have to pay that $15 because they have to come out and read my meter. I told them, I'm just fine. I'll pay the $15. Because I had
$15 is a
read
lot
that,
cheaper than brain cancer.
that what?
Said $15 is a lot cheaper than brain cancer.
That's what I believe. So, yeah, I definitely think that if somebody's coming around to your house and putting something on there that you don't know what it is, something digitally, you should definitely do your research before letting them put it on. So, yeah, thank you. And so, you already talked a bit about the health hazards. How do you know that they're health hazards?
Sure, good question. So like I mentioned, 5G is using what's called millimeter wave microwave radiation, which is a different frequency band, a different type of radiation than previous generations have used. Um, and so microwaves some people, a lot of people don't know much about them other than like, oh, I put food in a microwave. You know, some people do, you and I don't. Um, but you know, if we said, okay, it's using X-ray technology and these towers were beaming X-rays every 500 feet, like people might be concerned. Well, the fact is that even though 5G in of itself hasn't really been safety studied, what we do know is what we have studies on, and we actually have a lot of data on, is microwave radiation itself, the actual type of radiation, the frequency band that the 5G towers are going to use. And we actually have a lot of data on this, about 20,000 studies, dating as far back to World War II and even prior. Um, and I can pull some of this up if you want. We can share a screen. But actually, a lot of this data is from the U.S. military and other militaries that we've, you know, gotten. Documents have been declassified over the years where they've been studying how to use microwaves as a weapons technology. Okay, so as far back as World War II, they realized, okay, we can beam these microwaves at people and, you know, objects and tanks and things and try to fry them with microwaves. So the military studied these things to see what the effects of human health were. And so we have this data. And so people that study radiation, EMFs, and things like that, in, you know, in a academic sense or a clinical sense, are sounding the alarm and saying, okay, this is the very same technology that's a weapons technology, and you haven't studied it on human health. You haven't studied 5G on human health, because when, you know, the Verizons and the T-Mobiles and all that, and the companies that make the towers like Ericsson and things like that, they don't study these things on human health. They just study if they work. And they study that they, you know, they're safe and they won't explode or whatever, things like that. But they don't really look at that the health effects, either short-term or long-term, on if they're beaming these rays at people. But we have that data, and so that's how we know that it's unsafe. And I find it hilarious. People say, oh, well, there's no science saying it's unsafe. It's like, actually, we have like decades upon decades, literally 20,000 studies showing that it isn't. But there's a lot of industry propaganda out there. I mean, this is, you know, basically a, you know, close to $1 trillion boondoggle for the telecom industry. So they've got a lot of incentive to suppress any sort of dissent. But yeah, definitely not safe. So health effects, we can talk about. There's a lot of health effects, and you know, a lot of these health effects are demonstrated. Negative health effects are demonstrated to happen at levels orders of magnitude below what the FCC guidelines are. So the FCC guidelines say, like, okay, these devices are allowed to give off this much radiation. And with microwaves, we see negative health effects at a tenth, a hundredth, a thousandth of what the FCC says the max is. So well below the FCC guidelines, we're seeing harm to human health. Things like DNA damage, brain tumors, heart tumors. What we're seeing is the opening of what's called the blood-brain barrier. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for those people who are watching who maybe aren't familiar with that, your brain has a natural barrier for being selectively permeable, only letting certain things in. So blood will flow to the brain, but the brain will keep a lot of things out. Okay, and a lot of things like heavy metals, okay, that you may get from environmental exposure. Well, when you're exposed to EMFs, specifically microwaves, we can see that there's experimental studies in rats that have shown that the blood-brain barrier actually opens up and becomes permeable. And so things like heavy metals are found in the autopsy brains of people with Alzheimer's, people with autism, people with a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. So it's sort of like pulling the trigger when we already had a loaded gun of all this toxicity that I'm sure you know is out there. And then also a lot of depression, anxiety has been shown that like the closer people live to a cell tower, the more likely they are to have those kinds of psychological conditions. So there's a lot of harms to human health for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with some people who have come to me with severe migraine headaches. And we've done everything we could do as far as changing their diet and their lifestyle. And there's something else going on. And so
Mm-hmm.
you start to look at some of these things, how often they're on the phone. People these days are texting all day long. They've got the phone against their head all day long talking. And especially now that we're working remotely, a lot of us, it's scary. Some of the things, like even some of these initial symptoms, like something like getting frequent headaches.
Yeah, headaches is another one that I forgot to mention. And what I'll do is I'll share a document with you that has links to just tons and tons of studies
That
that
would be
show the
great.
negative health effects of EMFs and microwave radiation. Because I think, like we said, there's a lot of what we call FUD from the industry, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, where they say, "Oh, it's safe. Don't be a conspiracy theorist. Don't you believe in science?" This kind of nonsense.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, sometimes I'll say something about it, and I'll be with a group of professionals, and they'll say, "Karen, like, you're not talking science here. There's no science behind this."
Yeah.
And that's just not true. And especially according to what you're saying, 20,000 studies is pretty significant.
Yeah, it's actually one of the most studied phenomena on human health. Like very few things you're going to find, like even diet. Okay, like you just look at like plant-based diet and how many studies do we have to show that it's good for human health? Well, we've got a lot, but I don't think we've got 20,000 yet. Um, so
Yeah.
it's very, very well studied. Yeah.
Well, so I have a question for you. What are the Internet of Things and the Internet of Bodies?
Okay, great question. And I want to start with, I want to throw in an anecdote here, but the Internet of Things I alluded to earlier is when all these devices, for anywhere from your toaster to your washing machine to your HVAC system in your home, are all have an RFID chip and can all communicate with the grid without a human. So, for example, your house detects that the temperature outside is warmed up and it says, okay, well, I can turn the heat down and I can just open the blinds, let more heat in, that will save energy. Okay, which is a great idea. Like, I'm not knocking that. That's awesome. That's a good idea. That's one of the things they want to do with Internet of Things. Another thing that you can do with Internet of Things is you order a package from Amazon and you want to know exactly where it is. Well, guess what? That box has a chip on it, communicate with the grid, and now you can see like exactly where, in real time, track the box, right? You'll be able to order like a ride share, like an Uber or a Lyft, much faster because it'll be connected to the grid. You push a button, 2 seconds later, car pulls up, right? So greater internet connectivity. You have something like, all these smart devices. They even want to do something like a smart diaper,
Uh,
okay? You wear this diaper, it has a chip on it, and your
oh my goodness.
kid
What are
soils
we coming to?
themselves and you get a text message alert because you're being such a good parent, you couldn't pay attention, you're too busy like scrolling on the phone, so bam, you get the text message, oh, my kid crapped their diaper, okay. And then of course that whole time your kid's just getting radiation, like right. And these kids, I mean, their bodies are smaller, they have more water in them, their bones are thinner, so they're much more vulnerable to this radiation.
Definitely. They're still developing. Their brains and their nervous systems are developing. And
Yeah,
packs it with this kind of strong electromagnetic force. You don't know what's going on.
we definitely don't. And so we kind of want to just see the good that's going on and ignore that there could be negative health implications, like, oh, we'll be so interconnected, it'll be so, such a good thing. We'll be able to, do all these things and make our lives easier, but at the same time, we're just dosing ourselves with more and more radiation. But ironically, I was going to say, when I was working in the telecom industry, this was about, I think, 10 years ago. I remember we were developing some kind of technology, and one of the sales guys said, you know what, like if we develop a chip that does this company that I call on, they said it will be in what's called the new Internet of Things. And with the chance to make billions of dollars if we can develop them a chip that does this and get into the Internet of Things. And at the time, like everybody laughed at him. They were like, the Internet of Things, that is the stupidest idea ever. But now it's like 50% of their product portfolio. And it's an emerging technology where we say, oh, we're going to be so much more interconnected. We're going to be able to do all these things faster and more efficiently. But the downside is, of course, that we're dosing ourselves in much more radiation.
Yes. It's like,
And
for profit, is it really worth it
yeah,
to
yeah.
do
And
that to us?
people just see the dollar signs. And then when you and I want to say, hey, have you thought about the health implications? We're just, shoot away as anti-science and hysterical raw vegan, nut jobs.
Right, exactly.
So
And so the
you also asked,
Internet of Bodies.
yeah, it's a good question. So the Internet of Bodies is like the Internet of Things, but now everybody's got a chip in them. Okay. And you may have noticed, I think it was about a month ago, Elon Musk said we're gonna have this chip that goes directly into your brain, or they can put the chip multiple places, like in your hand, or it doesn't really matter where that much. But with this chip, it'll be your wallet, it'll be your passport, it'll be your digital ID. And so it has all these conveniences that, like, you can basically like go to the grocery store and just swipe your hand over the thing and you've paid, right? Faster. But the security implications are pretty dire, because now basically the grid can track you. And of course, this chip is giving off radiation. It's inside your body. We don't know what the health effects are of that. But the security and privacy implications are pretty dire. Like, say that, the government decides you're an enemy of the state. You're speaking out against 5G. We have to silence you. We can turn your money off. We can make it so you can't travel. We can, make the chip give off more radiation to poison you. These are just possibilities. But the fact is that you've given up a degree of your freedom and autonomy when you've been chipped. So, if you are going to do that, I would say proceed with caution. It's a way for, whether it's corporations or governments or whomever may have, nefarious ends in mind, can control you. So that's the Internet of Bodies. But that's what they want to move towards, and then they can tell, they can track you on the grid. Oh, these two people weren't standing 6 feet apart, or this guy wasn't wearing his mask. And it's
Some an invasion of your personal freedom.
yeah, it's billed as this, way of like making your life more convenient, but it also, it gives away a lot of your personal freedoms.
Yes, definitely. So, Dr. Benjamin, how can we begin to fight this? I do know a group out in Long Island that is doing some amazing work. It sounds
Mhm.
like you're doing some incredible work in your area in Arizona. What can the rest of us, what can we do? What can you set as where we can begin to have solutions for ourselves in whichever area we live in?
Sure. Good question. And we should talk about solutions and alternatives, because there is a way to accomplish what 5G is doing in a much safer way. Okay. And this is another thing we need to talk about, because, a lot of people say, oh, you can't just stop technology. You can't just all like live in the dark ages of 1994 when all cell phones could do is make calls. Like, things got to progress. And then I understand, and I'm an engineer. Okay, I want internet connectivity. I want to be able to do a Zoom call across the country here. So what we advocate for is safe wired technology, meaning that instead of what we're doing with 5G and 4G is basically beaming the internet down at everybody, okay, from the sky. essentially. So we're just coding everything with the internet through the air, and as a consequence, we're also getting bathed in all this radiation. But what if we just improve wired connectivity? Okay, and we have what's called fiber optic cable. And for a while there was a big push to get everything connected to fiber, and then the wireless companies came along and said, oh, but we can do it wirelessly, it'll be so much better, which we're finding out is definitely not the case. At least it's very unsafe. But a lot of this fiber infrastructure is already built, and so if we can get the states and the cities to finish the build out of the fiber, we can just basically get fiber to the premises, whether it's your home, your business, your church, your synagogue, wherever. And then they have internet there. And then if they want to run Wi-Fi and expose themselves to Wi-Fi, then okay. But we don't want to just be beaming the internet down at everybody and you can't opt out. So it's definitely safer. It's probably cheaper, and it'll actually get us faster speeds. Because we can do much more with fiber optic cable than we can, you can only beam so much through the air. So that's that's the solution we want to offer. Now, you have to get active, okay? Like, people are going to watch this video and go, oh yeah, I want to stop 5G. I'm going to share this video on Facebook. Good job, but you have to actually take action, okay? And so right now, there are people that are, there's Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s organization called Children's Health Defense. You familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, they're suing the FCC at the federal level, saying, you haven't raised the safety standards, the safety guidelines for wireless technology since 1996, which is true. So when I say that, like, these things were unsafe at a 1,000th of the level of the FCC guidelines, FCC guidelines haven't changed in almost 25 years. So he's suing them to do that. But that takes a long time, okay? And the higher up you go up the food chain, the longer it takes to make change. And like I said, the build out is happening now. I mean, by mid 2021, it's going to be done. So what you can do is get involved. I think the best place to start is just the city level, and meeting with your mayor, your city council. Maybe if it's a town, you got a board of selectmen or whatever they call it, and educating them about the dangers of the technology, educating them about, okay, we can do this fiber optic thing instead, and it's liability for the city, okay? Because when these towers go up, people can sue the Verizons and they can sue the T-Mobiles, but they'll also sue the city for allowing it to happen, and it's going to bankrupt cities. So you say, look, you don't want your city to go bankrupt, so what we can do, let's call a moratorium, okay? And just say, okay, until we review the science on it, which we don't need to do any new science, really. I mean, we got 20,000 studies, like I talked about, and you see, oh, it's unsafe, we don't want this, we want to do fiber optics instead. Now, in some states like Arizona, there are state laws in place where basically you can't say no to the towers, okay? Like, they've made it so that the cities can't say no. They get to build wherever the heck they want. What you can do, you can have the city create what's called a wireless ordinance, okay, which caps the power. All right. So to give you an idea, you need about 0.02 watts to make a 5-bar call. Like, to get 5 bars of reception on your phone, the tower needs to emit about 0.02 watts of what's called effective radiating power. Some of these towers, okay, can emit 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 7,500 watts. 25 million times the amount needed to make a 5-bar call.
Wow, that's so scary.
I know. But the city can say, no, tower's not allowed to give more than 1 watt or 0.1 watts or whatever. And then, so they can cap the power. So they can't tell the telecom companies, hey, you can't build it here, because you can build it here, but you can't give off, we're going to basically turn your fire hose into a squirt gun because we don't want to get hit by the fire hose. All right, we just want to make calls, maybe check our Facebook, but we don't want to get like deluged with, carcinogens. So that's, so those are your 2 strategies: get your city to call a moratorium, or get your city to cap the power, or do both. And so educational materials on how to do that. And this is, you're going to have to, form a coalition. You have to find like-minded people in your city. You're going to have to go before the city council and speak and say the right thing. You're going to have to follow up, have meetings with them, get them to meet with you, show them what's going on, draft an ordinance for them because they're lazy and they're not lazy, but they're busy. They got a lot of things going on. They don't have time to like write new laws for you. It's called lobbying. You write the law and they go, okay, this looks good. I'll pass it into law. And so resources on how to do that, 2 websites I want people to check out. First one is called mystreetmychoice.org. Okay, a lot of resources on there. And the other one is scientistforwiredtech.com. And it's scientist, the number 4, wiredtech.com.
I'll put
And then
that in the description below.
yeah. Yeah, and then if anybody's in Arizona, we have our own site. It's AZ for Safe Technology, AZ, the number 4, safetech.org or .com. We'll get you there. Join, sign up on my email list on there to get involved with the actions that we're doing to stop this technology. And we've got some, it's very interesting. We have some cities that are like, oh yeah, we don't want this. Like, what do we got to do to stop it? Let us know. And then other cities where they kick us out of City Hall. We try to join the Zoom meeting. They talk over us and they try to silence us. And it's interesting. But you got to get out there and you got to get involved. And you got to speak up. And
I remember seeing something online that the president or some head person in Belgium was saying that they were not going to permit 5G because they care about the safety of their people. I remember seeing that. So there are some countries that are taking more leadership as far as preventing these kinds of technologies from harming their citizens. But in the United States, we really always seem to have to fight for our causes. So
yeah, corporations have a lot of power here. I know that in France, what they had was, and in a lot of these other countries, they have more than 2 political parties. So it actually becomes easier to fight the system because the system's not as big.
yeah.
And so what happened was there was this huge surgence of the Green Party in France. And the Green Party really didn't want 5G. And they got all these people who were employees of one of the telecom companies there to go on strike and refuse to put it up. And a bunch of people who got into power in the newest election where Green Party said no 5G. And they basically gotten at least a moratorium on it over there. But here it's really hard to move the battleship, but you can move the battleship. It's more like a PT boat when it's in your town, but at the federal level, it's like a battleship. So the best thing to do is to just get active at the local level, spread the word, get other people active at the local level, and we'll attack this thing more from the bottom up than the top down. That's just like we're doing with.
Yeah, like me, because I live in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I know of this group that's out in Long Island, and I'm trying to get them to come out here to work with a group of us out here to show us what they've already done so that we can take off on that. And definitely tapping into the knowledge and experience of people like yourself, and some of these recommendations you're giving us will help us to begin, because many people are like, I don't know what to do. Well, listen, because there are things you can do. So I'm thanking you for that.
Sure. And look, I've learned a lot of this through trial and error. Like we've done a lot of things that haven't worked. But I have gotten, counsel and guidance from people in other geographies who've had some success, and we just kind of copied their tactics. And so that's really how it's done. Because there's a lot, these are giant corporations. They got a lot of influence. They got a lot of people bought off, and they got a lot of people duped into basically thinking 5G is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and how could there possibly be anything wrong with it? So you have to be willing to try a lot of things that don't work until you find something that does.
Yes. Well, that is great. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful information. We were really able to zero in on a lot here. And I will have this information below in the description. And if people have questions or want to get in touch with you, Dr. Benjamin, what is your contact information, your website, anything you want to offer to us as far as that?
Sure. So best way to get hold of me, On social media, it's always my name, Dr. Benjamin Benulis. So I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, probably most active on Instagram. So you can send me a direct message there. Also, email is fine. So it's Dr. Ben, 5 letters, drben, at fastmail.com is my email address. Feel free to email me and reach out. And yeah, let's definitely, I'll send you an email with those links I talked about so you have them.
Great. That would be wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I so appreciated having you, and I'm going to put this out to my community here on Super Healthy Children and hope that we can start building communities to get educated and to go to our town hall meetings and help find out more about what we can do about this.
All right, sounds good, Karen. Thanks for having me. Thanks for spreading the word. Thanks for being brave and speaking up, and being a dissenting voice when a lot of people want to knock that down. I commend you on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.